on Game Talk Live, we're covering everything that came out of PAX East this weekend, including boss keys foray into the Battle Royale genre, which may be too little, too late. Let's get right to it. I'm Mandy Roman, and welcome to Game Talk Live, where we discuss the biggest video game news of the day, live with help from our chat audience. Joining me now are three expert guests to discuss these gaming topics and more. First up is Nick. Nick DeRazio is a longtime esports fanatic who now works as esports manager and journalist for InvenGlobal. He specializes in emerging esports, classic video games, and competitive video game strategy. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hello, Mandy. As always, it's great to be here.
So glad to have you on a show that is not esports focused. It's a refreshing change of pace. So yeah, I'm glad to have you. All right. Also joining us today is Robert Workman, a writer-editor for the team over at comicbook.com/gaming and co-host of the Another Retro Gaming podcast. He's also a bona fide retro gaming expert and the George Clooney of video games. Welcome back to the show, Robert.
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you for giving me the introduction once again. I never get tired of it.
Excellent. And also joining us today, Trisha Hershberger, an online host, writer, producer who creates content around all things pop culture, tech, and gaming. You may know her from shows on Geek and Sundry, Newegg, and Kingston, and formerly Escapist and SourceFed, or her own YouTube and Twitch channels. Welcome to the show, Trisha.
Hi, Mandy. Great to see you again.
Likewise. We've all beloved friends of the show here today, so I'm glad to have you all. All right, let's hop right to it. In 2004, the Penny Arcade Expo officially launched in Bellevue, Washington, and garnered the attention of big-name exhibitors such as Microsoft and Warner Brothers. 14 years later, PAX has evolved tremendously, spawning multiple different events that are now held annually across the world. While gaming conventions were a rarity a decade ago, the community now has a multitude of options to select from. So, how has PAX, amongst the thousands of other pop culture cons, managed to continuously sell out and grow into new cities? Robert, what do you got?
Well, considering I just actually got back from PAX East this weekend, I can tell you the big thing about it is community. Whereas there are a lot more events we are seeing fans being able to go out and check out like new games that are coming up and being able to talk to people their own kind, whether they're in tabletop games or if they're in like Blizzard games at BlizzCon. It just seems like with these events, you feel a better connection with people that relate to you, and compared to like say a GameStop Expo that has a mixture of stuff and doesn't necessarily cater to you, but rather their consumers. It just feels like with these events, they reach out to the people and they make them feel connected. There's just really something cool about being able to talk to old friends that you know, as well as new people, and then meeting like these developers and meeting these cosplayers and everything, and just seeing like all of them come together and really just do what they love. Mm-hmm. It's really something about how they love it.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. I mean, when you're thinking like PAX in comparison to something like an E3. E3 is so much more industry focused that it can be easy as a community member to feel a little bit like an outsider. I feel like E3 is moving in that direction, but hasn't quite hit it yet.
Yep. Nick, do you want to add anything?
Well, I mean, yeah, honestly, as a huge PAX fan myself and self-confessed con nerd, there is a sense of like family and a community with PAX. I know a lot of people go to PAX, and even after their first experience, it almost sells them on going a second time and then a third time and then a fourth. And it's because they were there with their friends or they met friends. I mean, this is a con where there's board games. This is a con where you can literally sit there, and even in the hotel lobbies, you're playing games until 3 a.m. That type of community just doesn't really exist in other gaming conventions that, as was mentioned earlier, is merely industry focused, and you see a bunch of people in suits and ties. It just doesn't really cater to the casual crowd of gaming that I think is so prevalent nowadays.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. After you've gone to one PAX, you want to figure out a way to go to, maybe if you're starting at West, you would now want to go to East, or you want to go to South, or you want to go to PAX Australia. There's so many to select from now. Patrick in chat says, if I had to choose between PAX or E3, I'd choose PAX all day, every day. It just feels more inclusive to me, more of my style. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, if I could just make a side note, E3, this was built as an industry event, and now they're trying to convert it slightly into a community event, and it's a bit awkward, because like you have the people that have gone for years are now struggling just to, get in the doors to make their appointments and everything like that. Whereas, you also want to involve the public. It was kind of a mess when they introduced it last year. But, this year they said they have a better schedule and they're going to give it a better effort to make it a show pretty much for everybody. But, I mean, I really don't see it being as accessible as PAX because it seems to be more about, here are the new games on the horizon and, here are the streaming services available. And it doesn't really, I don't know, something about it just seems like a little bit off when it comes to community outreach. It's more about presenting to people instead of really involving them. You see my point there?
Yeah, and I do want you to hold those thoughts too, because we will be talking about E3 a little bit later in the show. So, Nick, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah.
You look in thought.
I was in thought because as we're talking about PAX and I'm going through my own memories with PAX and cons, I think that there's two things that pertaining to this conversation really sell PAX. One is you have this consumer attitude. You can go to PAX and you can buy so much stuff. You can buy so much fan art. You can buy so many T-shirts. You can buy so many board games and video games. There's so much to do there, and part of that gaming a culture is very, very closely entwined with this collector's culture. So I think PAX has that, and it allows you to do something even when you're not with your friends. Also, I think PAX has a very off-stream feel. I know when it comes to E3 and, again, other bigger gaming conventions in terms of the corporate scene, I personally always feel like I could have gotten every single bit of fun stuff just watching it on stream. I could have gotten all of the big announcements, seen all of the big trailers, and I could have done it from the comfort of my home. But at PAX, there's so much going on, and there's so much you can only see when you're at PAX, and there's so many people you can only see when you're at PAX. So I think those are two really important things when talking about why PAX is growing and why PAX is successful.
Well, a lot of the activations or booths that they have, they're very experiential. So it's not just, you're not just playing a demo. There might be something else to do at each of these booths or off-site and to experience the game or the brand in just a different way.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to. I was going to say Bethesda actually did something like that. They did a big community event on Saturday just right next door to the convention center where fans could come in and celebrate Elder Scrolls or check out Wolfenstein 2 for Nintendo Switch. It was a really cool opportunity for them to just come into this comfortable locale and celebrate what they love.
Yeah. And this show is not endorsed by PAX. We just really love PAX. I should put that out there for everyone.
I went to PAX. I'm talking about PAX. PAX.
It's a great con.
It is. We genuinely love it.
What am I going to talk about? Oh, these books are lovely. No, I'm going to talk about PAX.
So let's move away from PAX specifically and just talk about cons in general. And do you think cons can be continued exponentially? There are new conventions popping up every single weekend. Do you think we're entering burnout? Trisha?
I don't think we're entering con burnout at all. I mean, the whole point of a convention is taking like-minded people and bringing them together about a subject that they're incredibly passionate about. I once heard someone define the word nerd as someone who is intensely passionate and knowledgeable about a given subject. And if that means that we're bringing all the video game nerds in that usage of the term brought together in a place, or all of the comic book nerds, or all of the tech nerds, or whatever it is, I fully believe that there's a convention for everybody. If it's anime, whatever it is that you're super passionate about, this is a place that you can not only meet like-minded people, you can share your cosplay if that's how you like to express your fandom. You can share your new work if you're creating new pieces of art around or in that fandom. The possibilities are endless. There are so many different things for people to be enthusiastic and passionate about. I think there should be a con for each of them. I'm on board.
I don't think it's a bad thing that there's more cons. And I actually really like the point about there should be more specific cons. I really, really like a con when it's targeted. I think that's really great. I personally went to San Diego Comic-Con, I think maybe 3 years ago. And I think it was about my 4th time going. And I have never been since. And the reason is because I personally think cons that have grown that big have now become monstrous. San Diego Comic-Con is such an overwhelming, and I would even go as far to say, for me, a miserable experience. The lines are too long. You're packed in there like sardines. It's expensive. The food everywhere is overpriced, and like the entire city, that entire area just becomes so loud and busy and overclogged. Like, and for me, like San Diego Comic-Con wasn't always like that, you know, like before it was just one of my favorite comic book conventions. So maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, but I personally don't like when a con grows that big and it's like, well, you haven't expanded the size of this convention center. You haven't like expanded the size for this growth. So yeah, I guess there's my little hot take. I don't like it when cons get that big.
I'll show you how to experience Comic-Con, Nick.
Yeah, okay.
I will give you a guide, a lowdown, because I used to feel like that too. And then I figured out a different way to kind of experience things and do more things outside of the convention center, and I had a much better time.
Expert.
Yeah,
you're the expert, you know?
Well,
yeah,
I will share
that's
that
the best way
with
to go.
you. Okay,
when you have like an outside experience like that, it's really cool. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So I mean, Trisha, you're all for more conventions, but I mean, I feel like cons used to be something that fans saved up for during the year to then afford hotel and travel, and of course, like dealer hall purchases. I mean, how can you expect then this to happen when there's a con every single weekend? I mean, do they just have to pick and choose then which conventions to kind of go to?
Well, I think that we, as all people who are lucky enough to work in the industry, probably feel like there's a con every single weekend. But for people who don't live in Los Angeles or New York, you know, and live somewhere more remote, I know my friends that are in Philadelphia, where I'm originally from, are starving for conventions. I think they have like 2 or 3 now throughout the year. So for the people who can't necessarily afford to travel or don't have those opportunities, then I think it's really great. So maybe we have too many in the big cities, for sure. And also, I would say that I don't think that people feel the need to go to every single con. The more specialized and specific they are, that's your con that you save for.
Yeah, great point. I know we're a little spoiled in the LA bubble.
That feel like we need to go to every con. It's only us lunatics.
I have massive FOMO, Nick. I have to go to all the cons.
Do you have any idea what kind of hotel rates we'll be looking at? Oh, boy.
So speaking to more specific interests and more specific conventions, are we moving toward more developers, publishers, brands creating their own events and therefore having none or very little presence at events like PAX? Robert, what do you think?
Well, you know what? It's not just PAX. It's also stuff like E3, too. We saw Electronic Arts break away and do their own EA Play event. We see Bethesda hosting these big QuakeCons in which they really bring together the community. So, I mean, it would not be surprising if we saw more companies doing that. You know, like it wouldn't be a complete shock, for instance, if Activision did their own thing to talk about Call of Duty and Destiny and Spyro the Dragon, which we'll get to. And, you know, obviously, like I said, Sony's doing PlayStation Experience. Who knows? Microsoft may try to do something like that. I mean, it really is for the better in terms of concentration of community. Like I know at E3 this year, for instance, Microsoft is doing something separate in their own theater, whereas their like E3 thing will be basically focused on Mixer. So it's kind of a best of both worlds thing if players want to go over and experience the games someplace different outside of the hustle bustle of the show. So it can work. It's just a matter of doing it the right way and, you know, as was noted earlier, not standing in a line for 3 hours waiting to play something like Battlefield 5.
Sure. Nick, do you think this is a better option for the consumer or is it a better option for the brand?
Well, I actually think it's probably it's both. Personally, I think a company like Nintendo, I think they've been getting it right very, very subtly. I think their decision to kind of go online and like focus all their efforts on this online treehouse, you know, that they've been doing for E3. I think they early on identified, you know what, I don't think there's that much like value in trying to have this really big like competition share the stage space with all of these companies, because from my experience even talking to really the diehard Nintendo fans, that's all they really care about. So there's people that used to go to E3 only because they wanted to go to the Nintendo area, and I think that you can often say that for a lot of these big companies that have a really dedicated fan base. Now, do I think something like a Capcom con could work? Yeah, probably. And I think maybe over time, because those are such beloved IPs and games, it may get to be as big as something like BlizzCon, or maybe you would have like a Square Enix con, you know, because these fans are diehard. So yes, I do think it actually helps to consolidate your fans, because then you can sell them more, you can get them more hype for things, and you can have a more happy, like a more happy experience. And I definitely think it helps the fans, because they get to only see the stuff they want. They don't have to wait in line and wait and share the crowd space between all of the other fans they don't care about.
Sure. So, Trisha, we talked a little bit about BlizzCon. Do you think it's in Blizzard's best interest to focus all their efforts on BlizzCon and maybe minimize their appearance at other events like a PAX or even like a Comic-Con?
Well, I'm never in favor of brands minimizing their appearance at a bigger convention just to do their own thing. I'm a very why not both kind of person. We saw this, I do a lot of tech work as well, and we saw this in the tech industry as well with big brands like Apple pulling out of CES, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera, and doing their own thing at a different time. And just to kind of give a little bit of devil's advocate, although I agree with what Nick's saying, a little bit of devil's advocate on that is I feel like as a fan, it's really fun to look forward to like a big convention as our holiday where we're going to get all our juicy release news and all that stuff at the same time. And as brands break away and do their own thing, especially at a different time, I feel like we lose a little bit of that magic, and that's a little bit sad. But when it comes to Blizzard specifically, I think that BlizzCon is a much more fan-focused event. And I still think that there's a place at the big conventions like an E3 or a PAX to drop a huge bomb release surprise on everybody. That can be very effective, and still hold on to BlizzCon for the cosplayers, for people who want to get hands-on with the newest Overwatch hero, et cetera, et cetera. That's your much more community-driven event.
Yep. Dominic in chat says, VidCon used to be more for creators. Now it is more commercially for superstar types. So it sounds like Comic-Con is not the only convention that is kind of changing and morphing into something a little bit bigger. So, Robert, you brought up E3 at the beginning of the show here. And is there room for E3 to adapt to more consumer-facing activities and activations like PAX? Or should E3 remain for industry and press?
I'm just going to lay it on the line here. I think E3 should remain focused on industry and press. I understand what the ESA is trying to do in terms of making more money with the show and making it more relevant for the gaming scene and everything like that. But as we saw last year for the people that went to the show, it's like trying to mesh together two different worlds. And as a result, the floor could be overwhelming. You can't really get to appointments on time, or you can't really, get to see this game that you want to see. There are lines for Nintendo's booth that are 3 or 4 hours long just with industry people alone. When you throw the public in there, it becomes an all-day affair, So I think it's a matter of, I understand if E3 wants to do a community event for fans and hold something cool for them, that's fine. But the show should really be about for, the media there. And I'm not just speaking as a journalist, I'm speaking as a fan in general. It's just when you try to mix together two things, it just doesn't work. It could be a mess. So I think E3 should be left for the press to cover, but by the same token, E3 can also do something to kind of celebrate it off-site as well. They did that a couple of years ago. They had this thing where fans could go into this E3 separated section and really check out some cool stuff. I'm not sure what became of that, but it'd be kind of interesting to see them go back to that route.
Yeah, when the fire marshal has to shut down the Destiny 2 line, there's an issue. So
that was the worst.
Let's talk about something more positive. PAX East ran through this past weekend, ushering in a series of major game announcements and release dates. Insomniac finally gave fans a date to look forward to for their upcoming Spider-Man game, while Activision dipped into everyone's nostalgic side with the official announcement of the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. It's clear that remakes and remasters will continue in the world of video games. Is the Spyro Crash route the way to go? Trisha, what do you got?
It certainly hits the nostalgia button real hard. I mean, everyone I know that's of my generation was like, Spyro the Dragon! Like I saw people tweeting out pictures in their Spyro Kigurumis. Like, people are ready to go and ready to buy this game no matter what it looks like. And I would be a big liar if I said I wasn't amongst those people really excited for that, or Crash Bandicoot, if we're going to bring that one up too. It's really fun to tap into that nostalgia, for me specifically, because I feel like video games weren't as in then. So it wasn't quite as fun to celebrate them at the time. Like, it wasn't as favorably looked upon as it is now. So now that we are in the age of video games, it's really fun to, bring that back up and have that again. That being said, I think a lot of people have that concern of, please don't stop working on new IPs. We need new IPs too. So as long as there is enough creativity to go around that we can have these remasters and new IP, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And you know what? What's really cool is when a company can reimagine a game and somehow make it even better than ever. One case in point with that is Shadow of the Colossus, which is amazing. Yes, I love it. I love it so much. Feels like a new experience while still being nostalgic. And it sounds like the developers over there at Toys for Bob will really do magic with Insomniac's. It's kind of funny. Insomniac had their future announcement and their past announcement in 24 hours. It's nuts. But it's really cool to see a new developer try its hand at a classic, franchise, remake it properly so that it feels like a new game while at the same time still capturing that nostalgia. I think Vicarious Visions did that last year with Crash Bandicoot, and now other players will discover it in Xbox One and Switch and all that, and we'll also get Spyro the Dragon on top of that. When you have a team that's devoted to making an old series feel fresh again and keeping all its nuances intact, and amazing things can happen. It almost doesn't even feel like a remake. It feels like a reimagining.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Well, I just want to address the principal counter argument with that. Is a lot of people look at the film industry and they get really, really tired with how many remakes there are, and like, oh man, like why can't you just make new movies, new stories? Now, I think that is a valid, but I'm actually a huge fan of them like remaking classic games, because the one thing that separates games and film is the gameplay. Like, you can have these gameplay mechanics that are timeless. Like, a Spyro the Dragon is still a fun game. You can still play that on PlayStation and it's still really fun. So to have that gameplay mechanic just lost to time for no real reason, I was never really a fan of. The same thing can be said with Secret of Mana, that was recently remade, which was one of my favorite RPGs for the Super Nintendo. And I'm so glad to see that gameplay, which is so good, has been still found on value. So yeah, I actually think that I would love to see more games like this revamped. I still think Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of the best games ever made. So I think a lot of other people would really enjoy that game too if it was polished and had a brand new coat of paint and it was released. So I'm all for this, and I think that popular argument that it's just rehashed nostalgia, I actually don't think that holds water when you're talking about video games.
So
yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to add to that, the problem is when companies don't seem to realize the value of remakes. Like, Konami would make a fortune doing that Symphony HD port. I'd buy it up in a heartbeat and everything like that. But instead, they're focusing on stuff like Metal Gear Survive. I don't know.
And pachinko machines. Square Enix, also, we're looking at you. We're still waiting on one of those Final Fantasy remakes. So who is the remake of Spyro 4? Is it these older players that are want to revisit the game they remember as kids, or do you think it's for a new audience? Nick, what do you think?
It's for parents. It's for parents, and it's for people who have this golden age of gaming, and now they have kids, and now they have families, and they're more casual. So to get them to buy a game, you need to link back to that golden age. You need to link back to the things that got them gaming in the first place. So, I don't have kids, but if I did, oh my God, I would want them to play Spyro the Dragon. I'd be like, trust me, this game is so good. It's so great. And not to mention, I could help them with it because it's a game that I actually know and I could play. So yeah, I think there's a lot of new consumers that this could actually appeal to. It could reignite a lot of gamers. And, also there's just the people who really love platforming games and maybe have never heard of Spyro the Dragon at all and see all of the hype and say,
moving towards more open world, less linear games. That doesn't mean that there's not a place for the linear storylines.
Yep. All right, guys, I'm going to ask all of you this question. Robert, I'll take your answer first. What game would you like to see a remake or remastered edition of?
Well, you know what? That Symphony HD sounds pretty good, to be honest. But if I really wanted to put this on a wish list, there was a racing game that came out a few years ago called Blur. It was a terrific arcade racing game made by the team at Bizarre Creations, and it didn't really get. It became a cult favorite. It wasn't as big a marketable hit as Activision was expecting, and they kind of closed down the studio, but then it reopened. And I don't know. I keep thinking in this day and age when we have a lot of these simulation racers and everything like that, an arcade racer would hit the spot. So seeing something like that would absolutely be great to see again. And I really was, Activision's considering making like a lot of their franchises come back. Obviously, we've seen Spyro, we've seen Crash, so I'd love to see Blur somewhere in there. But that's just me. I like blowing up stuff with fireballs.
Nick, what do you got?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked me this question. So the obvious is Warcraft 3. I'm just going to get that out there. It's one of the best games ever made. That should be remade. However, I've actually had this talk with my friends before. I think that a game called Azure Dreams, it was an RPG for the PlayStation. And the thing is, it actually has all of the elements of modern indie games, but it was just made way before its time. Anyone who recognizes the game probably is like, oh yeah, that game's great, because it's this like cult classic. But it's a roguelike monster sim where you can like raise and breed monsters, all while combining dating sim elements and while being an RPG. So like, if there was ever a game that I honestly think has every single cool buzzword for like what makes an indie game or what makes a game that's streamable even, like Azure Dreams has it. So whoever controls that IP, like, you should make it. It's a great game.
All right, Trisha.
There are so many. I'm like sitting here as you guys are talking going, oh yeah, that's great too. Oh yeah, let's do that. I would love to see Cyan bring the worlds of Myst and Riven all to VR. That's what I would like to see. If we're talking about
Trisha
taking
VR
modern,
in there.
That's like an amazing idea.
Oh my God.
So awesome.
I would
like
play
just
those,
to take modern tech and infuse it into some badass old games. That's how I would like to re-experience that one.
Oh my God, why hasn't some VR company gobbled up every single point-and-click masterpiece like that? It's like a perfect fit.
That is perfect.
Well, Cyan had the spiritual successor, Abduction, that just came out a couple of years ago, and they did do Abduction VR, and that was cool, but it was not enough.
It wasn't Myst.
Agreed.
Brian in chat says, Fear Effect, Metal Gear 1, or Parasite Eve. Ooh, I would love a Parasite Eve remake.
Wow.
That's a great pick. All right, guys.
If we're going to be old school, I want to throw one more out there. Jet Set Radio Future.
Oh,
nice.
Yes.
That'd be great with HD as well, just saying.
Space Channel 5 then, if we're going to go.
Oh, Space Channel 5?
Okay,
that is an obscure title.
I know, but I love Space Channel 5. Okay, moving along.
I'm expecting a Space Channel 5 cosplay from Mandy by Years End.
There you go. You heard it here, folks.
All right. So, Insomniac Games' Spider-Man title will finally release this September exclusively on the PlayStation 4. While Insomniac has a long history with Sony's platform, this is the first major Spider-Man release that isn't being released on multiple platforms. Could this be a mistake for such a widely known brand for it to not be available on systems like the Switch or Xbox One? Nick?
Well, you know what?
Robert's going to think.
Go for it.
I feel like I'm jumping in everything. It's the PAX East thing. I'm sorry.
You're just really excited about Spider-Man.
I'm not normally, mostly I'm not normally like this. But this thing premiered at a Sony event. You know, they premiered it on Sony's thing and everything. So it's like, you should know right off the bat, it's exclusive for PlayStation 4. I've seen so many people like, oh, it's not on Xbox One. Oh, what about Nintendo Switch, or PC? I've seen so many people do it. And I was like, guys, it was at a Sony event. This is a PlayStation 4 exclusive. But it was kind of funny how they had to do that. But, this is big for Sony, obviously. They know how to do their first-party exclusives. God of War next week is going to be tremendous from what I'm hearing. Like, everybody's loving it so far. So, my 2 cents is I think Spider-Man's just going to add to that and give Sony one of its biggest years ever.
Yep. All right, Nick, what do you got?
Well, one of my favorite jokes that people would say about the Wii U was it was just a breath of the wild machine, because there were so many people that only bought a Wii U so they could play a Zelda game. Now, I'm not sure if Spider-Man is that big when it comes with gamers, but Spider-Man is that big when it comes to just people. When it comes to just like your average consumer. Spider-Man's huge. So if this is as good of a game as it looks, and it follows in the footsteps of other really incredible superhero games like Arkham Asylum, yeah, I think this would be really, really great for Sony. So far from what we've seen, it looks like an incredible game, and Spider-Man is by far like the coolest, most popular Marvel hero right now, especially off the back of that amazing movie. If you guys saw it, the new Spider-Man movie, so good. So yeah, I think this is a really, really good idea, and honestly, I think it's a big win for Sony.
Yeah. Trisha, do you think this could sell PlayStation consoles?
Most definitely. I mean, I'm bummed as a consumer because I'm primarily a PC gamer, and I feel like there are tons of PlayStation exclusives brought by Sony that look really, really good that I would really like to play. And if I'm not currently hosting a show that happens to have that game as the focus of an episode, that means I probably am not going to get to play it, at least for a while. So that's a bummer for me. But does that, make people want to go out and buy PlayStation? Absolutely. Is that great business for Sony? Absolutely. So this game, I think, looks incredible. I was really excited to see Yuri Lowenthal be able to announce that he's the voice of Spider-Man and Peter Parker in this game. Voice actors in games usually can't talk about it the entire time they're working on it. So it's really exciting when we finally get to see who is who. I just think it's going to be a fantastic game. And I, as a PC gamer, hope that I get a chance to play it.
You know what, Trish? They might release a special PlayStation for Spider-Man edition. You never know.
What an enabler, Robert.
yeah.
Because they did with God of War. You never know.
That's
I mean,
true.
I'd be all over it. And it'd be like my third PlayStation 4 in the house.
All right. So
maybe
another thing that happened at PAX East over the weekend was our first taste of Blizzard's Payload Tour, Overwatch's Payload Tour. So even, and we're talking about BlizzCon, we've been talking about companies like Blizzard maybe pulling their appearance from other cons so they can focus on BlizzCon. But even if companies can't commit to a huge flashy booth, are these cosplay booths or photo ops good places for fans to meet and interact with members of the team? Trisha?
I think that it was a really cool idea. I mean, it was one of the things that made me super extra bummed that I wasn't at PAX East. So I was here in LA the whole time, just kind of living vicariously through all my friends who were there. So you're very, very lucky to have been there, Robert. But yeah, on almost everybody's Instagram, one of the things that I saw was a photo op at the Payload Tour. And all the awesome cosplays and everybody talking about them and coming together to share them. And I think that that is awesome. And I saw that I think they're planning to bring it to other conventions as well. So I'm hoping to be able to see it in person at E3.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I think is the point. I think the whole point of it is, I've been going to cons for so long, and it's very rare you see someone take a photo of someone's booth setup and then post the photo of that booth setup and say, wow, look, I was like, no one ever does that. That's not how social media is shared. That's not what people want. But at the same time, now you have a company like Blizzard who is so good at acting as if they like dominated the show. And this Overwatch on Payload Tour, it's actually really, really brilliant because, as Trish said, every single con this is at, it's going to fill up people's feeds. It's going to fill up people's Twitter. All I'm going to see is photos with these amazing cosplayers. And you're going to get this impression, wow, Overwatch is everywhere. Wow, Overwatch is massive. I can't believe even at this con, Overwatch was a really big deal. So yeah, I think it's actually a really, really clever strategic move. Whoever thought of this idea, ups for you. It also serves the community, but also is a very, very clingy and very sticky way to get all over social medias without really putting that much effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as someone who does, go ahead.
I was going to say, I saw it firsthand, and it was amazing how many people it drew together. I saw these cosplayers come and just talk with each other, get into great photo opportunities. It really, and this was just the first stop. I mean, like Trish said, they're going to come to E3, they're going to come to other conventions, and they're going to be a much bigger draw. Obviously they'll have to set up something a little more elaborate to make up for all those people that are coming in. But I mean, the way it's going now, that tour is very effective.
And
and Mandy, I'm sure you can relate to this as well, but as someone who cosplays, having a place to go with a digital backdrop specifically in line with your cosplay is mind-blowing. I mean, when you cosplay and you go to a con, you're busy looking for the most blank concrete wall
without a trash can in it. Yeah.
Right, without a trash can in it, to really get that one photo from the con that you can then composite later. I mean, they're doing that for you, and that's amazing.
And kudos to Henchman Props for creating, I believe, 4 different cosplays that were worn, including Brigitte. I'm sorry, it's pronounced Brigitte. Thank you, Nick. Yes.
I've been saying Bridget. I've been way wrong.
So has any company done a better job or a similar job of maintaining and feeding into its fan base as Blizzard has with Overwatch? I mean, for me, Riot's the first one that comes to mind, but Nick?
Yeah. I was actually going to say Riot 2 is really, they're just as powerful in the cosplay race, you know? There's some amazing League of Legends cosplayers, and Riot gives them tons of support. And actually, I think last time I was in PAX East, there was this amazing League of Legends area in which you could walk through this entire Summoner's Rift thing, and there was multiple like huge cosplays, like cosplays that it's not just one person. It's like a 5-man job to make this thing and then move it, and you were able to get photos with each of them, and then at the very end they give you this little exclusive like League of Legends swag. So like, you know, that's something they did just for PAX East, I think, like last year. Or I think I was in Boston when it happened. But anyways, the whole point is Riot really does a good job of giving their fans those experiences. And I think Blizzard and Riot, because of how beloved their IPs are, they probably have more of a responsibility or expectation to do that, because, you know, part of why people play their game is they're like these lifestyle games. You know, there's League of Legends players, and they use that to like define themselves. And same thing with Blizzard fans.
All right.
And also adding to that, we have Bethesda too. Let's not forget they do their thing with QuakeCon, with their PAX East event that they had this weekend. They go all out for their fans too. It's actually kind of amazing how much they support them.
Absolutely. Let's talk about this other piece of news that came out of PAX East this weekend. PUBG's second map, Miramar, is making its way to the Xbox One version of the game. Despite the fact that the game still suffers from poor performance on the base version of Microsoft's console, should PUBG's developers be focusing on new content for the game at this point, or on stability and performance? Nick, what do you think?
You know what? I've always had this weird, like, suspicion that part of PUBG's like charm that no one really like expected is how shitty it is. Like, you know, like I always feel as if part of why people like to watch it and why people like to play it is because there's this bit in which you're fighting against the game. There's a sense of grittiness. So, like, there's a part of me that wants to say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I am very well aware that a lot of the mechanics are broke, but people still play the game. I feel as if you're only thinking about losing the race that is the Battle Royale race of everyone trying to be the best and trying to be the game, I think it's more important to focus on the content. It's more important to focus on the new shiny stuff, the new shiny maps, because you really don't want your players to get bored and then, you know, switch over to the F word that no one probably likes to say there, you know, the Fortnite, right? So yeah, I think it's good that they're releasing new maps, and yeah, I still can't really know why people play PUBG, but I think part of it is because it's a little like gritty.
So Trisha, can the new map and recent timed events for PUBG be enough to draw players back from Epic's Fortnite?
Oh, I don't know. I agree with Nick that I think that part of the charm is how gritty it is, but I more so think that not necessarily part of the charm, but that people have just gotten used to it is kind of the feeling I get. That being said, I don't play PUBG personally. It's not my type of game. But from talking to friends who do play, it's not something that they're constantly like, oh man, that needs to get fixed all the time. So maybe they're smart in releasing new content and not focusing on the core gameplay as it is now. And maybe this will bring people back that are looking for something new. But yeah, Fortnite is such a behemoth right now, that especially with all the success that Fortnite streamers have had lately on Twitch, with the whole Ninja Drake thing, you know, like I feel like it's just a big one to compete against right now. And PUBG and Fortnite are the two biggest. So if anyone could do it, it'd be PUBG, but we'll see.
Yep. All right, it's time to take a quick break. But before we do, I want to ask our viewers to send us a message letting us know what topics you would like to see us discuss on the show. We'll be right back.
Make some noise.
Hi, my name's Todd. We're going to be playing some H1Z1, and a lot of you out there are going to be able to win some prizes by guessing when our guests die. Sasha, are you ready to go play some H1Z1?
Let's do this.
I think we've seen this story before.
We got a lot of guests tonight from all over the world. They're competing for a trophy, our Champion of the Night prize. Which one of you is going to be the best player tonight?
Anybody that comes in my way is done.
Get a helmet, get a backpack, get a rifle.
Or just hide and hope I get lucky.
He's feeling the earth. That's a very Native American approach to battle.
I give the people what they want to see.
Oh my God! Oh wow, he took a big hit. He got it, guys!
Can you throw me in like the Norwegian server or like someplace where they're just not gonna find me?
No.
Did I die first?
No one's died that early in the game ever.
Welcome back, everybody. Earlier today, Cliff Bleszinski's Boss Key Productions revealed their latest project, Radical Heights, a brand new take on Battle Royale. The game's 80s aesthetic and promises of genre-defying features pique interest, but the studio appears a little late to the party. With the likes of Fortnite and PUBG dominating Battle Royale, can this genre withstand any more competition? Nick, why don't you start us off?
No. No, it cannot. I think it's very what's the word? Enthusiastic of them to once again say that they're going to redefine a genre of game that was currently under very, very hot competition. It's almost as if they didn't learn from LawBreakers at all. I mean, this is literally the start of the LawBreakers downfall. You see these two games that are super, super popular in a way that you can't even comprehend, in a way that is probably linked to not only a greater Twitch community, but also because of a gameplay that has been refined over time. Now you're saying that you're going to come in with a new game and redefine it? That's the same thing you said about LawBreakers. And you literally called LawBreakers the Overwatch killer. It wasn't. LawBreakers is dead. And now you're trying to do this same... I don't know. It just seems very... Like, there's so much hubris. I can't believe after such a huge defeat in LawBreakers, they're just doing it again. And yeah, bad idea.
So is the 80s theme enough of a shtick to keep it around? Are they hopping on the nostalgia train we mentioned just a few minutes ago? Robert?
You could have all the 80s themes in the world that you want, but if you don't structure your game the right way, it's not going to bring in anybody. I do like the idea of an 80s motif in a Battle Royale game, but it's like Nick said, it's a matter of, did they learn their lessons from LawBreakers? I mean, they charged $30 for that game, and here they're doing the free-to-play thing. Okay, that's a step in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go to getting your audience back, to getting people involved again, to see if there's something there that makes the game stand up besides the fact that it's in an arcade or whatnot. You know, it's a matter of finding that hook that brings them in and not being egotistical about it. I think one of the biggest problems with the LawBreakers is like when it was failing and everything like that, Cliff Bleszinski went all out to say like F the media or they'll come instead of actually, I don't know, making improvements to the game to bring them in. I mean, that should have been free to play from day one. Charging $30 for an entry fee was terrible. It was just, it almost seems like the team is trying to hit the reset button, but we're still in for the same questionable game performance.
Yeah. So going on what Nick said, we can likely attribute LawBreakers' failure to an oversaturated market and edgy aesthetic. However, isn't Radical Heights much of the same? Wouldn't it be in Boss Key's best interest to attempt something new or to rely on what works? Trisha, what do you think?
I think that whenever you're shooting into a market that is the hot thing at that given time, in my opinion, that's a real solid way to get mediocrity. So you're going for a genre that you know lots of people are playing. So you're going to get some interest because specifically of that genre. But if you can't find a gameplay mechanic that's out of this world, a revolutionary for that genre, it's very, very hard to stand out. So I don't know. I think of it as, you know, being the hottest restaurant, or not being the hottest restaurant on the block, but the second hottest restaurant on the block, and constantly placing your location next to the hottest restaurant on the block to try to get their people. You'll never be the top, but you might do okay. You might do pretty good. I feel like that's what they're shooting for, and I would love to see me eat these words and have them do something completely revolutionary with it and change the scene.
Sometimes it's a matter of showing and not really telling. Like there was this game that came out called the Darwin Project. It came out for PC and Xbox One, and it had very little fanfare and everything about it. And then all it took was like, what was it? One hot day on Twitch, like 200,000 views or anything like that. And now it's gaining more of an audience. You know, sometimes it's taking the slow and subtle route instead of like, oh, this is our game and it's going to be the greatest game ever made. And it's not LawBreakers 2, I promise. You know, it's a matter of how you approach this and how you get people hooked, you know. So maybe don't trumpet its arrival, but just say like, hey, we're releasing this tomorrow. Check it out and see how it builds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and even on like the first gut instinct, just looking at the game, it doesn't look very fun. It doesn't look very new. It literally looks like I'm watching someone play a remod of PUBG. Like, is this just like a skin or something? Like, I don't know. If I'm being really cynical, it almost feels as if the entire game was made because they really hope that Dr. Disrespect streams it. It's like they wanted to try to match his, you know, like his aesthetic as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's just the whole thing reeks of desperate. Like, just make a good game. That's all you have to do. Stop trying to ride the coattails of every fad.
So I do want to read this quote from Bosky regarding Radical Heights gameplay. It says, only in Radical Heights does in-game cash you find carry over into future matches. So could this system be detrimental to newer players and keeping those new players interested? Nick?
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all. Like, if that is their big key, the fact that someone who wins once gets to win more, and that then they win more, they get to win even more. It's like, okay, that's like a really easy way for me to not play your game. That's a really easy way for a new player to be like, oh, well, you know, like I start off the game with 0 cash and this guy doesn't. I don't know. I guess it's a good, seems interesting, but you have to compare that with something like Fortnite that actually changes the genre with weapon rarities and building and the entire aesthetic, the entire mechanics of it. I mean, you can literally ride rockets in this game. Like, that's a game that really took the genre and then saw what they could do with it. You know, I don't know. I feel as if I understand what they're going for, but this almost reminds me of the whole Dota, League of Legends, Heroes of New Earth Rush. You know, it was this big game, that type of genre that like everyone knew would be good, and the only 2 players that survived were the games that just focused on making a good game. That's all they really wanted to do. They just wanted to make the core MOBA gameplay work. They wanted to appease to both the competitive crowd and the casual crowd, and it just doesn't seem as if Bosky is saying, yeah, we really want to perfect the mechanics of Battle Royale because no one's done that yet. No, they just, I don't know, want to make a gimmick.
Yeah, Robert.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Isn't the whole appeal of Battle Royale that it's randomized and that you could literally have one match where you've placed 80th and then the very next match you place first because you've gotten better drops and better weapons?
Yeah, exactly. It should be more focused on the gameplay, not the gimmicks. You know, anybody can have gimmicks, you know, but the way, like, say, Fortnite incorporates, you know, its features, the way it incorporates these limited edition modes for us to try out to see if they could possibly come back in the long haul and get us excited about something to come back in the future. You know, the way that kind of balances out is you want people to be excited for your game. You want all people. You don't want these people like, well, I'm going to clean up on cash and I'm going to come back and buy all this stuff and kick your ass. It shouldn't be like that. It should be a balance in which all players can come in and appreciate the game and keep wanting to play the game. That's why Fortnite works so well, and that's why I have a feeling that Radical Heights won't be so radical.
Bud in chat says, my friends all already have Fortnite. Why would I download a new game or wait for my friends to download it? So LawBreakers felt like an attempt to take on Overwatch but fell flat. Will Radical Heights be able to take on the heavyweights of Fortnite or PUBG? And Trisha, I'd like to throw this question to you. Because the game is free to play, will this allow it to succeed against Fortnite or maybe H1Z1 or other Battle Royale titles?
I don't know that it will allow it to succeed. It may allow it to be somewhat competitive. I think if they came out with a AAA price point out of the gate, then definitely why would people go for this game when they have a free-to-play option? So just to stay competitive, that was a must. But do I think that that alone is going to make it compete? No, absolutely not. I think the only way that they could maybe jump into a market that's that oversaturated and do it their own way is kind of in the same way that Blizzard tends to, making, Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone kind of be a easier entry point for people who are new to that genre. That might be a way to take their own spin on it. I think we've seen Blizzard do that very successfully in many oversaturated markets, but that is their own special spin on it. Like we've been saying over and over, if Bosky can't put their own special sauce on it, then it's just another competitor in an oversaturated market.
And it almost felt like that's what shut out LawBreakers. It almost seemed like a game that was built for experts. Like, I know people who tried to play...
Cliff Bleszinski has been creating games since the early 90s and has brought us titles like Unreal Tournament and Gears of War, but hasn't created a new successful IP in years. What do you think is going on here? Nick?
I mean, it's almost as if the industry has radically changed since his success, and he still acts as if that success matters. It's almost as if the games that he used to make sure may be designed well back then, but nowadays, Twitch and our connectivity, gaming is so social now. I personally think that half of the players that still play WoW is because one of their stubborn players hasn't actually quit yet. So you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll still play because all of my friends still play. And I think our commenter brought that up. He made a really great point. He said, why would I play this game when all of my friends play Fortnite? That's a very real thing. And that's a very real thing that if Cliff Bleszinski wants to see success, I think he needs to start realizing. Every time he tries to go into a game market and go into some genre and beat everyone, he's actually trying to contend with friends that want to stay together and play together. Like, he's trying to be the person that moves that entire friend group to his game. So yeah, I just think it's if it doesn't seem like any of his past success matters in this ecosystem. It's like he's doing the wrong thing, the wrong strategy.
Exactly.
So is there such a thing as a new idea for video games anymore? Well, any new game, especially multiplayer ones where there's no real story, tend to resemble other games in the same genre. Robert?
See, it's kind of a mixed line there, depending when these games releases. Like at one point, 2K Games' Battleborn was supposed to be this big advancement on the whole co-op movement and everything like that, but then it ran smack dab into a little something called Overwatch, and, well, we all know what happened after that. But I think there is still room for innovation. I still think there's room for companies to try out new ideas and everything like that. And one place you can look at community events like PAX. I saw this multiplayer game called Aftercharge, in which one team is invincible and the other team is invisible. And it actually provides a neat little tactic on multiplayer. And I actually found it to be rather enjoyable. And what's more, these guys are releasing it for Nintendo Switch, so they're going after that audience as well as PC. So it's actually a pretty smart move. So there is room for innovation and trying new ideas and all that stuff, but you want to make sure it has an established base. I can understand Cliff Bleszinski wants to create something new, to do Battle Royale and everything like that, but the problem is it doesn't really look that appealing. Oh, it's an 80s arcade, fantastic, but you need more than that. You need something that makes it feel like something different. And that's kind of why I'm excited to see what, indie developers provide and everything like that. And who knows, we might see something amazing in Red Dead Redemption 2 that stands out from other multiplayer modes. There is that possibility. So, I like to think the idea of new stuff is still there. It just seems like some developers like to take the easy way out in an attempt to try to make money, hence Radical Heights.
Sure. So, Trisha, how does a game stand out in 2018?
Great question. When Nick was talking about you are trying to tear apart friend groups, that is so daunting and scary for people who are trying to put a new game out there. And while, yes, it's an incredibly ambitious thing to do, I think that people should continue trying to do it because that's the only way we're going to get new, unique games. And so how do people stand out from the crowd? If I had that answer, I'd be worth $1 bajillion. But in my opinion, it's creating something brand new, not just in the narrative, but in the game mechanics, taking something that we're familiar with and doing it in a brand new way. I think we've seen a lot of success in the indie scene over the past couple of years of that. And that's why the indie scene is as popular as it is, because that's the place to find everything that's unique and different in gaming right now.
Yeah. And you can look at games like, personally, I think the answer to that question is probably pretty boring. And I think it's boring because it's hard. I honestly think you have to be so good that people are forced to consider you. Like, you have to make a game so good that no one can actually ignore this game. Cuphead did that. They made a game that was so good, people who didn't care about platformers, people who didn't care about indie games, they played that game. Undertale also did that. They made this guy made a game that was so good, people who had never even once thought about playing this style of RPG, they're playing it. You can even look at something like a Doki Doki a Literature Club, which is, again, this is like a dating sim, right? Or a horror point-and-click game that, again, people would never even play that genre, but it was so good they were forced to say, well, what's everyone talking about? So, yeah, if I had to answer the question of how you get known in 2018, you have to, like, stop trying to ride a wave and just make a good game that no matter who you put it in front of says, oh, wow, this game has some value. Like, this game's good.
Create your own wave.
Yeah.
Create your own wave.
There you go. Patrick in chat says, there is room for innovation, but it must be polished and work really well. And on that,
look at that. Exactly.
Yep. And on that note, we are coming to the end of our show. I want to thank all of our viewers and our guests for being here. Tell us your final thoughts and where people can find you on social media, and we'll start with Nick.
So I say this with some sort of irony because the entire first half of the show, we talked about how the con scene is oversaturated, but we're actually creating an esports con, and you should go to it. It's the InvenGlobal Esports conference. It's happening May 1st. You can check it out on my Twitter. I have links all over it. InvenGlobal.com/IGEC. It's going to be awesome. If you love esports, or if you love me, if you want to see me, I'll be there. So that's where you can find me for the next 4 weeks. I'll be talking about that.
All right, thank you. Robert, your final thoughts and where people can find you online.
One other game I wanted to just mention there for innovation is Splatoon. It's not every day you see a hardcore game with hardcore shooter elements attract both kids and adults. That's amazing. And you can find me at twitter.com/thedcd. You can find our podcast at retrozap.com. That's the ARG podcast. And you can also find my work at comicbook.com/gaming. And the next con I'll probably go to is E3. So if you're going, I'll see you there.
Thank you, Robert. All right, Trisha, your final thoughts and where people can find you online.
I think this was a really exciting PAX. That's my final thoughts on everything that we talked about today. And I look forward to many, many new, unique, well-polished games to come. If people want to find me on social media, they can do that at ThatGirlTrish with no I in the girl, or at youtube.com/Trisha Hershberger, or at twitch.tv/Trisha Hershberger. Or if you're into more video game, newsy kind of talk shows, you can check me out on Geek and Sundry's Game Engine every Tuesday on twitch.tv/Geek and Sundry at 4 p.m. Pacific.
Thanks, Trisha. And thanks to everyone who watched, commented, and shared the show. I'm Andy Roman. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and watch Game Talk Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. We'll see you next time.